Hi there, I'm Lanna Monday, and I am back with Ramy El-Batrawi. How we doing, Ramy?
I'm doing great. How are you today?
Doing very well. So we're so excited to have you back with us this week because we're going to continue our discussion on your book, Can You Really Think and Grow Rich? And of course, we've been talking a little bit about your rags to riches story times 10, 12, many times over, many cycles you've been through. And last week, we touched a little bit on alibis and we talked about burning desire. So chapter 2 in your book focuses on specifically the hope of gain versus fear of loss is one of the key points, and limitations of life. So can you maybe explain a little bit about what your focus is in chapter 2?
Yeah, chapter 2, I start my journey. I talk about how I left home at 12, hitchhiked to Tampa, and
Right.
yeah. So at the beginning of the journey, after I learned everything from chapter 1, Burning Desire, because I built the Burning Desire,
Right.
I knew one of the biggest things from the Napoleon Hill really preaches is number one killer of success is procrastination.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, should I, finish high school 3 more years, 4 years of college, it's 7 years wasted, or should I go after what I was really dreaming about and wanted? And so I decided to leave right there and then. And that's why I left home at 12, hitchhiked. And I was homeless for the first 5 years and then made the first million by 17. And I learned a lot of the principles. So the things I learned at the beginning years is in chapter 2. And first, it was a really a great poem that Napoleon Hill put in his book that I actually duplicated and put it in my book. And it talks about a guy who kind of worked really hard and just worked for menial hire and bargained for life for a penny. And at the end, he realized whatever he asked out of life would have gladly paid.
Yeah.
And when I first started reading that, the poem was a poem. So I didn't get it at first, but after reading it a few times over, I finally got it because it really kind of like explained it in a simple way, but in a profound way that whatever you ask out of life, you get.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. So if you think that if you're only asking out of life, enough to survive $500 a week to food and rent and all that, that's all life will pay you. If you ask to be a millionaire, life will give you that. Whatever you ask and want out of life will actually gladly pay because it is out there in the universe for you to get. And the limitations that there is for you is the limitations you put on yourself. So that was a really powerful poem to really put out that there is no limitations of what to succeed. Just like all these people who achieve great wealth from nothing, is because they believe they could. And it's true. I think is it double kill somebody says, if you think you can, you're right, and if you think you can,
either way,
you're right also.
Yeah.
And you do become what you think of most of the time. I mean, I put in the book also, doctors think about being a doctor. They go to medical school, they read journals, they treat patients. So all they do is think about being doctors, and they become doctors. They earn the salary of a doctor, they treat patients, and they don't see the other opportunities business bring or build anything more than that. If you think of being an engineer, that's what you're going to be. If you think of just being a salaried employee at Starbucks and you're happy making the minimum wage and that's all you think about, that's all you'll be. So it's really changing the way you think, and it is really a very important thing to really shift the way you think if you want to achieve those levels. Because if you think at a certain level and you hang around the people that think that way and you believe certain things, that's what you're going to become, because your mind will give you what you want. And again, whatever you ask out of life is what you get, and that's what's really important. And then I continue on to that in chapter 2, talking about a meeting I went to a Glenn Turner meeting, and Glenn Turner was the father of the pyramid scheme. And I went over there and I was just listening to him talk, and he showed this example of how everybody starts usually in America. At 18, they get their first car, and then about 20, they have an apartment and furniture, and then they're working to make those payments. And then they meet Susie Wright at 23, 25, and then get a house and a second car, and then kid 1, kid 2, kid 3. And then you have to pay for colleges. And then your fear of loss kicks in over a hope of gain. You start
right.
not wanting to lose the little things you have, no matter what your dreams are, because you don't want to lose that house or that car.
Right.
And the problem with that is you're now trapped. You're setting the schedule 9 to 5, go home, watch TV, have dinner, live for the weekends, once a month, once a year, have a vacation, and you do that day in, day out, month in, month out, until you're 65 years old. This is what he mentioned back then. People retired at 65, and the average person, and you get a gold watch, and the average person lived a couple of years after they retired, and that was it. That was a whole life. So I realized I had to shift that. I had to reverse that, and I did that very early on. Is I made my hope of gain greater than fear of loss. I live with no fear, and try to teach people to live with no fear. At risk so many times everything, for the greater, bigger goal that I had. So it's very important not to be afraid to lose those little things, because if you're afraid, you'll never try the things that you really want or dream for, because it's just fear is so easy to have, and it'll cripple you. And in back of Napoleon Hill's book too, it talks about the 6 goals of fear, all the different things people fear about. So it's really getting rid of the fear, and that's what chapter 2 is really dedicated about, is getting rid of the fear, and then being able to just go after what you want. And then one of the new keys I introduced, and how I achieve a lot of success, almost all my successes in businesses that I do, is I think it's one of the first, is find a need and fill it.
That's how so many businesses are created.
Yeah, I mean, when I was young, what reason I made the first million is I found a need of people needed to cut keys in this department store that didn't have service staff. So I was able to build key centers in 230 of their stores. And even today I find a need. Where when Uber Lyft came, there was a lot of drivers couldn't afford a car, wanted to drive for Uber. I bought cars, rented to them, and build a multi-million-dollar business out of it. So it's throughout life. If you always find a need and you fill it, and that's how you build wealth. So chapter 2 is basically dedicated on those 3 things, which is a lot, and you grasp it, and you can read it over and over again. But one, don't put any limits on what you want. That's really, really important. Get rid of all the fears that you have, find a need and fill it, and then you'll find success. And that's the biggest parts of chapter 2 in the book.
And you talked about young people and how they get into like the situation of, they go to school, or maybe they have a job and they become dependent because they get in debt, for their job. What advice would you give young people today in terms of keeping their dream in the forefront and putting the action behind it? What could you tell our young folks today? What advice would you give them?
But it's really hard for me to talk about that, because I did drop out of school and stuff. But some people, that is their path to go through school, and it depends what they desire and want. If they really want a career in medicine, a career in something else that needs college, then you definitely do that. But again, there's a lot of people who graduate school that I think 89% don't use what they learned in a degree. But but education is important. Because if you look at countries that are educated and countries that are not, they do better. So it's good to have an education. But at the end of the day, if you're not happy with the path that you're in, you got to follow the path that you want to do, and then put everything behind it. And that is really, burning your bridges and stuff to really just follow that path and not be afraid to do what you want out of life.
And I think too, sometimes people get hung up on formal education, because really it's about seeking knowledge to get you from point A to point B. So because that's what Henry Ford did. If he didn't have the knowledge, he would find somebody who did and plug them in.
Like it said in thing, specialized knowledge is cheap. Every time I start a business or need to know something, I hire those people, and I get the knowledge that I need. I have the overall picture of what I want to accomplish and what I want to put together, and I bring the people who have specialized knowledge to execute on it. And so it's really, again, you got to do it makes you happy and not be afraid of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us again, Ramy. We certainly do appreciate it. And for those of you who are interested in obtaining a copy of Ramy's book, you can actually get that from his website. It's called Can You Really Think and Grow Rich.com. And he has that paired now with a copy of the original Think and Grow Rich, the original 1937 edition. It is an exact reprint of Hill's book from then, so it makes a wonderful pair because there are so many references and quotes that Ramy uses from Think and Grow Rich. So you can actually go read his book and say, okay, did Hill really say that? And then you can go reference it and say, oh, yes, he did. And here's how Ramy applied it. So Ramy, thanks again. And will you come back and maybe talk about your next chapter next week?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you, folks, and we will see everyone next time. Bye-bye.